Hi guys, and welcome to today's tutorial. In today's lesson we're going to focus on a developing country and one that suffered, a developing country that suffered an earthquake. And the case study that I've chosen is Kashmir in 2005 and in Pakistan. So that's the earthquake we're going to focus on today. Okay, so the earthquake in Kashmir happened on the 8th of October 2005. And the time it happened at was 8:50 a.m. So it happened in the morning. So that was Pakistan time. So 8:50, 10 to 9 in the morning. The intensity, the magnitude of it, it was 7.6 on the Richter scale. So it wasn't as big as the 9 on the Richter scale that we looked at for the developed country of Japan. But you will see the effects that a 7.6 earthquake actually caused in Pakistan because they're a developing country and they weren't prepared for it. So the focus, it was a shallow focus. And the focus was only 10 kilometers below the surface. So 10 kilometers below the surface. The epicenter of the earthquake was near Muzaffarabad, so near Muzaffarabad. So it was near Muzaffarabad in Kashmir in Pakistan. The area affected was over 250 miles of a stretch. So over 250 miles was affected, and these included 3 different countries: Afghanistan, Pakistan and India. The location was located on the plate boundary between the Indian plate and the Eurasian plate. So the Indian and Eurasian plate boundary. So the Indian plate is the oceanic plate, and the Indian plate is subducting beneath the Eurasian plate and the continental plate. The rate of movement is 4 centimeters per year. So the Indian plate is subducting 4 centimeters below the Eurasian plate at a rate of 4 centimeters per year. The plate boundary that's on is a destructive plate boundary. So it's a destructive plate boundary with an oceanic and continental, with the oceanic being subducted beneath the continental plate, which is the Eurasian plate. The aftershocks, there was 22 aftershocks in 24 hours after the earthquake, so it's 22 aftershocks. And one of the aftershocks actually reached 6.2 on the Richter scale. Other hazards that was created because of the earthquake was mudslides. So lots of mudslides was created. And there was lots of landslides also created because of the original earthquake. The death total, is still unknown and is not 100% accurate, but we know that there was over 70,000 people killed in the earthquake. There was over 70,000 people injured from the earthquake, with many of these injuries being left untreated and leading to infections. To rebuild the infrastructure, there was, for the immediate rebuilding of the buildings, they needed over 400 million. 400 million euro was needed to for the immediate like aid, but they actually for the complete like rebuilding of everything that was destroyed, it was suggested that 4 billion was needed to repair all the houses, the transport links, the roads, rail, bridges, to restore all the electricity, to restore water pipes and sewage pipes, and to rebuild schools and hospitals. So all of that was completely destroyed, with 400 million being required for the immediate like aid, but it actually needed to have 4 billion to rebuild everything for total. The next thing we're going to look at is some of the reasons for the high levels of destruction and debt. And one of the first reasons was because of the poorly constructed buildings. So most of the buildings were really poorly constructed. They weren't suitable to withstand seismic waves, and therefore when they suffered an earthquake, the surface waves of the earthquake just completely just destroyed all the buildings and infrastructure. The second reason for the high levels of debt and destruction was because of the time of the earthquake. The earthquake happened in the morning time, and therefore that meant that lots of people were in work and got trapped within the buildings. Lots of children were in schools, and the schools collapsed, and therefore it caused thousands of people to become injured, trapped, and killed. The third reason for high levels of destruction and death was because of location. Many people lived in places that was inaccessible areas because they lived like in mountains or in deep valleys, and this with very poor or limited transport like systems. So it made it really hard for emergency services to try get to these people, and therefore because they were waiting a long time, probably injured, then this led to them dying. After the earthquake happened, there was lots of hazards such as landslides and mudslides because of the heavy rainfall that came after the earthquake, and this caused many people to be trapped, prevented lots of emergency and relief workers from reaching these people, and then caused more people to be killed. The fifth reason was for the high levels of destruction was because of the really poor response from Pakistan. Though like they did try, like there was a lot of efforts made, and there was lots of people did try to help out. Their plan and their availability to respond to the situation wasn't good enough. It was over 3 million people were left homeless, and they had no shelter to go to. So this meant that they just were left out in the middle of nowhere in the elements, and because of the really poor weather conditions that followed with really heavy rainfall and snow, people then were exposed to the bitterly cold conditions, and that enabled them to get sick and to pass away, to unfortunately be killed because of the weather conditions. Maybe thousands of people were injured as well, and then with no home, no shelter, this enabled them to then to get sick and to die. There's also like the water supply was destroyed, and that meant that millions of people were left without clean access to clean water, and this led to them then being exposed to diseases such as cholera and typhoid, and this led to them getting sick and ill and then dying as well. There was a real lack of emergency supplies such as like food, water, blankets, tents, and people then just purely just died because they were exposed to the bitterly cold elements. Another thing that showed like really poor response on the behalf of Pakistan for this Kashmir earthquake was that many places were inaccessible due to being in deep valleys or up in mountainous areas, and the only way they could get to them was by the use of helicopters, and they couldn't get through on the ground because of the severe weather conditions. So they weren't prepared for dealing with an earthquake and then being able to deal with these poor weather conditions that followed. 10 days after the earthquake, so in the 18th of October, 20% of the affected area had not even been reached yet. So people may have actually survived the earthquake, but then because they might have been trapped beneath rubble and the buildings, they were then passed away because they were because of lack of water and food supply, and because they were exposed to the harsh elements as it was really, really cold. Lots of hospitals in the major cities couldn't cope with the sheer numbers of injured people. And even a year later, nearly 2 million people were living in like temporary like shelters. Many people received no aid like whatsoever, and it's estimated that it will be 2020 before all the houses will be replaced that were knocked down. Okay, so that's looking at 15 years later, and they're not even sure if that will be reached by 2020, but that's what they're hoping to be. So you can see that this earthquake caused huge destruction, huge deaths, and huge number of injuries. But then, because of their poor responses, unlike Japan in 2011, lots more people were injured or made very sick, or unfortunately like passed away, like died. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, can you leave me some feedback? Please send me a message on Twitter if you enjoyed it, or Facebook, or Instagram, or you can leave a message on our website examvision.ie by going to the contact us page. I really love hearing like good stories from students, as that does like drive me on to want to make some more videos for you guys if I know that they're actually helping you. Thanks, guys.